So, what do you do? Do you have a great answer to that question? An answer that you're really proud of? An answer that makes you look forward to people actually asking that question? I didn't. It was 2013. I was living in New York City, and there was a conference in San Diego. My buddy told me that you have to go to this conference. It's so cool. I love San Diego, but he said you have to be there. So I didn't even ask any questions. I just booked my ticket and went. He said the speakers are amazing, the attendees are amazing. So I booked my ticket and I went. After the first speaker, who was amazing, I was just sitting in the back, way back there like you, and I turned around. They said, just like Matt said last year, turn around and meet the person behind you. So I did. I turned around, and he said, what's your name? What do you do? That question. So what do you do? And I said, well, my name's Hebert. I grew up in Wisconsin, and then I started working for Accenture, and then I moved all around the country. I went to New York and Boston. I covered everything. My intro was like slightly longer than my life to that point. And I realized that it was a terrible introduction. So to stop myself, I said, what's your name? What do you do? He said, well, my name's Matt, and I run a little software company. He was just as cool as Fonzie. And I was like, that's cool. I'm still just rambling. I was like, that's cool. I'm into software. I'm into startups. What's it called? Maybe I've heard of it. And again, just as cool as Fonzie, he's like, it's called Automatic. And in that moment, I knew who I was talking to. I knew that I was talking to Matt Mullenweg, one of my internet heroes, because Matt created Automatic, which is the parent company of WordPress, open source software that powers 26% of the internet and probably half the sites in this room. And in that exact microsecond, the event photographer snapped this picture. This is what it looks like when you meet your hero and completely embarrass yourself. So I walked away from this interaction never wanting to feel that way again. Matt and I have not spoken since that moment. Ever since that exact moment, I've been obsessed with finding and crafting the perfect intro. I walked around the grounds, I skipped the next few speakers, and I felt kind of like, you guys remember the old Chris Farley bit on SNL where he's like, oh, it's so stupid. Like, that's how I felt, because I blew my intro to Matt. And so I've been obsessed with finding and crafting the perfect intro. But the word perfect is interesting, because online, especially on Instagram, the word perfect gets a bad rap. We talk about the word perfect, but we say things like, nobody's perfect, don't try to be perfect, perfect is the enemy. And I think about perfect a little bit differently. In one of my favorite scenes from one of my favorite movies, Good Will Hunting, Matt Damon's character is talking to Robin Williams' character, and he says, man, I found this girl and she's perfect. And Robin Williams, a wise old advice, says, I got news for you, champ. This girl, she's not perfect, and neither are you. But maybe you're perfect for each other. So a different frame of perfect, a different context of perfect. Perfect isn't a one-time thing. Perfect isn't the ultimate, the one and only. Think of the perfect conversation. You've had lots of perfect conversations, not just one. The goal of any conversation is real human connection. Before you can get the phone number, before you can sign the brand, before you do anything, you have to have real human connection. So I want you guys to think back a bit to high school, maybe college. I don't know how good of students you all were. I certainly procrastinated a few times, studying for midterms and finals, So you remember that moment? It's usually about 2 a.m. after some pizza, probably some Red Bull, maybe a second coffee. You're trying to cram a semester's worth of information into your brain at the last minute because the test is the next day. And you just wish your friend Matt would slide the test under the door. You have that sort of illicit thought at 2 a.m. And you wish he would slide the test under the door. Because if you knew the question on the test, what would you do? You'd study just those questions, prepare the perfect answers, and you wouldn't just finish early, you'd ace the test. I'm here today to tell you the question that's going to be on the test. Today, tomorrow, and every day for the rest of your life.
What do you do?
So what do you do?
What do you do?
What do you do? What do you do? What do you do?
What do you do? What do you do? What do you do?
What do you do?
What do you do again?
Technically, what do you do?
So what do you do? What do you do?
What do you do? What do you do? What do you do?
What do you do? So what do you do?
What do you do?
What do you do? What do you do? What do you do, bro? So what do you do?
You guys have already been asked that question today. You were asked that question last night when you're meeting people. You're going to be asked that question 10 or 20 times in the course of this conference. If your intro isn't repeatable, it's not portable. And if it's not portable, it doesn't spread, and you don't get that word of mouth. You want to come up with a portable intro and a portable story. You need an intro you believe in and a story that you love. So why do we care? Why do introductions even matter? Because we meet 3 new people per day. People like us that are in the world, on average, one of the studies says we meet 3 people per day. That's 1,000 people per year. That's 50,000 people in your lifetime. Forget you for a second. Don't they deserve a better introduction than the one that I gave Matt Mullenweg? I'll pick on myself, not you guys. So I love great coffee. This is my super geeky coffee setup at home. I'm not great about meditating every day, but I do make coffee every day, and it's a little bit meditative, so I cheat. When I'm on the road, I try to find really great coffee, like Verve. I was just at a place in San Diego, or a place in San Francisco, and Verve has killer coffee. Think about the things we do every day. We make coffee, we shower, we brush our teeth, we get dressed, we walk around, and we introduce ourselves. Of these things, we do most of them pretty well. We don't put our pants on backwards, we don't fall down in the shower, we don't accidentally brush our knee instead of our teeth, but we don't introduce ourselves very well. We know that we're going to get asked, so what do you do? We know the question on the test, and if you didn't know it 5 minutes ago, now you know. You're going to get asked, so what do you do? I believe that poorly explaining what we do and accurately telling our story in an interesting way is our most frequent mistake. We all get up every single day and we make this mistake multiple times. So why? Why do we get introductions wrong? 3 reasons. Number 1, we never get taught. Number 2, we get taught poorly. And number 3, we believe in the 3 myths about introductions. So number 1, we never get taught. Here in the US, to get a driver's license, you have to sit next to some guy who smells like Subway and prove that you can parallel park on a hill, and then they give you a little plastic card that says you're allowed to operate heavy machinery. There is no driver's license for introductions. Nobody teaches us how to do it, except for one thing. Sometimes we get taught, but we get taught poorly. What do we get taught? What did Matt mention up here, how we get taught to introduce ourselves? We get taught to create a, come on, I know it's early, elevator pitch, yes. If you Google elevator pitch, this is what comes up. TMSS, the first of its kind customer service management dedicated system of transportation, freight forwarding, logistics, supply chain industries, full-fledged serial. Is anyone still awake? Why do we get taught this? The elevator pitch is terrible. None of you should have an elevator pitch. In fact, I want to recruit every single one of you to help me kill the elevator pitch. Are we in? All right, let's kill the elevator pitch. It doesn't actually happen. Why was it created? What do they tell you? Well, someday you're going to get on the elevator at the Westin Copley, and before the elevator gets to the 29th floor, you're going to have to pitch Matt Kepnes on your business. No, that doesn't ever happen. And even if it did, nobody wants to be pitched. If you meet Matt in the elevator, isn't it better to be more confident and interesting and tell him a story, maybe leave him wondering a little bit about what you do? And also, think about what gets bought and sold in elevators. I don't think any of you are in that business. Almost all the elevators in America are built by the Otis Corporation. The Otis Corporation was founded a long time ago, and it's named after a guy named Elisha Otis. Now, Elisha Otis didn't invent the elevator. He invented something more important. He invented the elevator brake. Elevators had existed for a few years, but they were very, very dangerous because if the cord at the top broke, you can imagine what happened. The cab fell, and it was bad news for everyone inside. So he figured out a system. He was an engineer, and he figured out a system where if the cord broke, his brake would engage and stop the elevator. So this is Elisha Otis. He organized a demonstration of his new elevator brake. He hoisted up the platform in a convention, the first World's Fair in New York City, a place that used to be called Crystal Palace. It's now Bryant Park for you New Yorkers. And he told his person, cut the rope. And the audience gasped because they thought he was going to fall to his death, and his elevator brake that he invented engaged, and he fell 2 feet, and he took a bow, and he said, all safe, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the fourth reason why we should never have an elevator pitch, because you're never going to beat the original. That was the original elevator pitch, and nobody's ever going to do it better. What Elisha Otis did when he invented the elevator, it changed everything. It allowed us to build buildings and skyscrapers and changed real estate and changed the world. He literally transformed not just the real estate industry, but the world. Did you guys know that the top floor, often in condos and apartment buildings now, it's called the penthouse, and it's the most expensive, right? The big fancy one at the top floor is the penthouse. Do you know the top floor used to be the cheapest? Because before there were elevators, you had to schlep all your stuff up the stairs. So he flipped it around. That's how important his invention was. So you'll never beat the original, so let's not even try. The other reason is we believe in the 3 myths about introductions. Myth number 1 is that it's about you. There's only one guy who should make his intro about him. Are you Game of Thrones fans? So the problem with I am or I'm in, that's how most people start this, right? They say I'm a travel blogger, or I'm a VP of strategy, or I'm in a certain industry, I'm in travel, I'm in media. There's a lot of problems with that, but the best one is it's a way to end a conversation. I am is like the shortest, most succinct way to end. When someone says, so what do you do? And you say, I'm from the IRS, end of conversation. Myth number 2 is that it should be 100% complete. We all get hung up on this. You guys are all multifaceted, multi-talented people, and we struggle because we try to cram everything we do into our introduction, probably because we get taught to have this stupid elevator pitch. Completeness is for resumes, which are dying anyway. It should be interesting. And myth number 3 is that it should be 100% accurate. The second myth makes it too long. This makes it too clunky. Our desire to be accurate forces us to use these boring, clinical, 4-syllable words. So the typical intro, how most of us answer the question, we make it about us, we make it too complete, and we make it too accurate. My intro to Matt Mullenweg that was terrible was the worst version of all of those things. The perfect intro is not about you, it's about who you help and why, and it's interesting, and it's confident. Think of your favorite actor or actress and how they might introduce themselves. I don't care whether it's George Clooney or Jennifer Lawrence or whoever. They would not ramble on and on and on. They would have a short, interesting thing, usually because some great screenwriter wrote those words for them and they memorized their lines. Well, by the time we're done today, you can write your intro and memorize your lines. So the base formula, this is how to do it. I, since you're the one introducing yourself. Now, I know I said it's not about you, but we're going to fix that with just one word. Right after I, we say help, or some form of the word help. We'll change that in a second. Next is people, and again, we'll customize this in a minute. Everybody still with me? I know it's hard. I help people. Still with me? Because I'm going to need your help on this next part. Achieve a result. What do you help them do or achieve or become? I can't answer that for you. I gave you the first 75% of it. You have to do the last part. This is the whole thing. This is the base formula. We're going to make it more fun from here. I help people achieve a result. What do you help them do or achieve or become? Let's look at a few examples using the base formula. My friend Jonathan Fields, who some of you know, runs a great empire, book, podcast, speaking, everything, called The Good Life Project. So Jonathan's is pretty simple. I help people live a good life. And if you meet Jonathan on a plane someday and you ask him what he does, he'll say this with that calm smile. My friend Christina Rasmussen lost her husband to cancer in their 30s. And then she wrote an amazing book called Second Firsts that helps people re-enter life. She runs the Life Re-Entry Institute, and she says, I help people begin again. I help people begin again. 5 words. And now you know better what Christina does than most people's intro. My friend Jim Quick can say, I help people fall in love. And then he pauses just long enough to be uncomfortable with their brains. Jim is a brain trainer to people like Will Smith and Elon Musk, and he's got speed reading courses and everything else for the rest of us. Jim is all about the brain. He's got a podcast about the brain. He loves the brain, and he wants you to love your brain. So he says, I help people fall in love with their brain. Our fearless leader, Matt, could say, I help people see more of the world. If Matt met someone on a plane and he said this, it explains what he does without being too complete or too accurate. Mark can say, I help people find hope. Cheryl could say, I help people find their wild, right? Or Tony could say, I help people make the planet less lonely. My friend Jada, sitting right here, says, I help people lead their tribes. Really simple. Or Dan Dembski, founder of Unbound Merino, some of the best clothing to travel with. That's the end of the commercial. He could say, I help people travel lighter. And not just lighter with the clothes and lighter what you put in your suitcase, but lighter with mental and stress, because when you pack fewer things, you have less stress about traveling, you travel lighter. So let's look at the rules. No buzzwords. Pretend you're talking to a 6-year-old. Because as Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. When you go test this, you have kids or nieces or nephews or grandkids, test it on them. See if they understand it, because if they understand it, everyone else will. Every industry has buzzwords, no buzzwords. Use as few words and syllables as possible. Stay away from long words, lots of syllables, complex buzzwords. What are some of the buzzwords in your industry? Anyone? Tribe. What else? Optimize. What else? What'd you say? Authentic, yes. Don't say, I am an authentic, heart-centered travel blogger. Don't say that. Nobody cares. Really, nobody cares. You guys are laughing because you think they care. They don't care. I want you to shoot for intrigue over information. And I want you to, shoot for intrigue over information. This is a conversation, not a resume. A conversation should feel like a ping pong match that goes back and forth. The goal is to get them interested, not to explain everything you do. Think of it like an opening headline. And infinite. Your intros, the rule is, people forget this, because even after they see this presentation, they try to come up with one. They try to fit everything they do into one. And you'll see examples of people who are tremendous and do amazing things and do a million things, and they have lots of intros. You can have infinite intros. Simon Bowen can say, I help people sell without selling. Matt can say, I help people reconnect with adventure. right? That's accurate for Matt. He could use this one in a different context if he wants to. Stephen Christopher can say, I help people clone their clients. Rachel can say, I help people see all the angles. You don't know what Rachel does, but if you met her and she said this, you'd want to know more, which is the point. Neil Gaiman says, I've never known anyone who was what he or she seemed, or at least only what he or she seemed. People carry worlds within them, and all of you carry worlds within you. Your intro cannot be complete, and you cannot have just one, so don't even try. You're going to have a framework to create infinite intros, as many as you want, on the spot before you walk into any room. So now, customize it. This is Howard Moskowitz. None of you know Howard. Howard was hired by Prego in the 80s to create the perfect spaghetti sauce. The one perfect. Remember that word, perfect? They hired him to create the perfect spaghetti sauce. And so Howard gathered all the data, interviewed a bunch of people. That's what he did. He worked for these big consumer packaged goods companies. And Prego said, here's literally a ton of money, millions of dollars, create the perfect spaghetti sauce, because they were getting their butt kicked by Ragu in the spaghetti sauce market. So Howard ran all the data, it came back, and it was all over the map. And Prego said, you already cashed the check, and we're gonna need you to do better than that. So then he ran the data again, and he grouped under a few different categories. And it turns out there is no perfect spaghetti sauce, only perfect spaghetti sauces, plural. Because the people like me who like it super spicy Diablo burn your mouth spaghetti sauce are not the same people who like garden vegetable. Those people are boring. Howard's realization led to $600 million for Prego in 10 years. $600 million to the bottom line. Some of you in this room remember when you used to go to the grocery store and there were 10 kinds of spaghetti sauce. Now there's 200. That's because of Howard. But the point is, there's no perfect intro. There's only perfect intros. I want you all to leave with 5 or 10 or the ability to create anyone on the fly. All right? Now change people to who you help. Like Matt said, I used to do a lot with Kickstarter, Indiegogo, crowdfunding. So I would say I help entrepreneurs fund their dreams. I help who it is I help, and then what I help them do. But if I was speaking at the XOXO conference in Portland, they think of the word entrepreneurs as evil Mark Zuckerberg down in Silicon Valley. They see themselves as creatives. That's fine. They're entrepreneurs, they're creatives. But if I was there, I would say I help creatives fund their dreams. You see how you can just pull the slot machine lever and flip out one word and it works for that room that you're walking into? If I was in Brooklyn at the Nearly Impossible conference where they identify as makers, I would just swap out that word and say, I help makers fund their dreams. Super simple. This is my friend Ari Meisel. He says, I help founders become replaceable. His company is the Replaceable Founder, and he helps people be more productive. I'm a super big productivity geek, and I go to Ari when I have questions because he's the productivity geek's productivity geek. Simon could say, I help executives sell without selling. You're speaking to who you're speaking to. You change that word to know who you help. You guys want to know a little ninja trick? No? Yes? Okay. Ask them first. You know when you're walking into a scenario or a situation where someone's going to say, so what do you do? That question, right? You know when you're walking into Travelcon, you know when you're going to lunch today, and you know when you're getting on the plane on the way home, someone's going to ask you, so what do you do? So the ninja trick is just simply ask them what they do first. Now there's 100 better questions to ask than so what do you do, but you can always whip that one out and say, so what do you do? And they're going to tell you about themselves, probably poorly. But then you know what word to customize. You know whether to say creatives or leaders or executives or men or women, right? So think about it. Customize the word people. Now I want you to change help to a different verb. You can use lots of different verbs. I connect, I make, I decode, I build, I teach, I show. What verb is it that you do? What verb do you do in your business? My friend Jason Gaynard, who runs Mastermind Talks, like Matt said, he says, I connect amazing entrepreneurs. He connected Matt and I via his conference 7 or 8 years ago. Justin Newton works at Disney, but he does not play the role of Tinkerbell. Justin sits in a spreadsheet all day and makes sure that the rides and the projects that they build at Disney, he makes sure that the math works. So he says, I make magic real. Cal Fussman could say, I decode personal stories. He's one of the greatest living interviewers. Naveen Jain's a VC. He could say, I decode the future. Dr. Shefali could say, I build better families. Mark Manson could say, I teach people how to give less. Yes. Joanna Wiebe, amazing copywriter, could say, I teach people the power of words. She used to do it for them, but now she's too expensive, so she teaches them. Jim could say, I show people the power of their brains. You see how you can swap out that second verb to be whatever you want? Rachel could say, I show people all the angles. Angie Lee could say, I give women permission to be brave. So it's your turn. Think about what's your verb. Change help to what's your verb. What do? Do you connect? Do you make? Do you decode? Do you build? Do you show? We've been talking a lot about I, but a lot of you work for companies. TripAdvisor, a lot of big companies here, and some of you run smaller companies than TripAdvisor. There's a great article in Quartz called Startups Can't Explain What They Do Because They're Addicted to Meaningless Jargon. The article is accurate, but it's incomplete because it's not just startups. It's all of us. This was one of the intros from one of the startups in the article. It says, we visually organize our cloud-based content for cross-platform synergy and distributed access. Raise your hand if you're investing in this company right now. Of course not. I becomes we. So Dan could say, we help people travel later, because Unbound Marino was founded with 2 of his buddies, and now it's a bigger company. Ari doesn't just work as a solopreneur. He'd say, we teach founders to become replaceable. He's got a whole team. And that's part of what he teaches, is how to build a team. Tony Guerreri could say, we build better cultures. I was doing this for one of the largest defense contractors in the country, and these guys make planes and tanks and aircraft carriers. And I was like, how do we do that for them? How do we get what they do down to just a few words? And what we came up with is, we protect those who protect us. Catalyst could say, we create events people remember. How about a hand for our Catalyst team creating awesome events? I was doing this for a company called Spherical in New York City, a workshop, and they were struggling with what to call their luxury boutique hotel independent. So we said, we help the best hotels in the world tell better stories. You don't even know Spherical. You've probably never heard of Spherical, but now you have a better idea about what they do. Carl could say, we reconnect leaders with adventure. So let's look at some alternate formulas. You guys have the base formula down. I saw every single one of you write your perfect intro down on your notes, so we're good there. Let's look at a few alternate formulas. I'm X for Y, or we're like X for Y. This is my friend Simon Manwaring. He's a branding genius out of Los Angeles. Simon's a great guy with a great smile and an Australian accent. And when someone says, Simon, what do? He smiles and he says, well, I'm like the wolf from Pulp Fiction, but for brands. And in that moment, Simon gets to read the person's face, because everyone in the world has either seen Pulp Fiction or they haven't. And Simon gets to read that and see if you've seen it before, and then he can take his intro in 2 different ways. Another thing you can say is, we turn X into Y. This one's really fun. It takes a little more work, but it can create a really fun introduction. My friend Tucker Max runs a company that is now called Scribe. It used to be called Book in a Box. And there we turn X into Y is, we turn ideas into books. We turn ideas into books. When someone says to Tucker, what do? That's what he says. If you have a book you want to write, Book in a Box, now Scribe, can help you get there. It even works on Wikipedia. Angie Lee could say, I turn fear into action. The tribe of women that she leads, she helps them become brave and turn fear into action. Justin Newton could say, we turn math, the spreadsheet stuff he does all day, into magic, which is what Disney delivers to the customers. Or you can use the roles and the people that you help create. Ari Meisel on the productivity stuff, he said, I turn cogs into mentors. Simon could say, I turn shapes into sales. So think about what's your X for Y, or we turn X into Y. You can have fun with it. The point is to be fun and short and humorous, not so serious. I'm friends with these guys, Doug Brackman and Randy Kelly, and they teach meditation. A lot of entrepreneurs have tried meditation and failed, and most of the reason they failed is because there's no feedback loop. If you go to the gym and lift really hard, you get sore. There's a feedback loop. You're sore and you know it's doing something. With meditation, that feedback loop isn't there, so they created it. They say, we teach people how to meditate at gunpoint. Now, I know it looks like they're pointing a gun at you, demanding that you meditate, but that's not the thing. They take you to a gun range, and they teach you how to use a very safe sniper rifle and shoot long-range guns at the range, and you can't hit the target at 920 yards if you're thinking about a million things. They teach you how to meditate, and then they create a feedback loop. Neil Gaiman needs no help with words, but he says, I make things up and I write them down. Justin from Disney could say, I make sure the Death Star stays on budget. Right? You can have fun with it. Angie could say, I help women not suck at sales. Or my friend Sean Stevenson, base formula, I help people improve health through better sleep. Sean's a sleep guy. But that's kind of boring. It's more fun to say, I put people to sleep. If I had abs like Sean's, I'd say I help people in the bedroom. How short can you go? How short can you make it? A lot of you guys know Gary Vaynerchuk. When someone asks him what he does, because a lot of you know Gary Vaynerchuk, but a lot of other people in the world don't know Gary Vaynerchuk. If you walk outside in Boston, you'd have to ask 100 people before you found someone who knew who Gary Vaynerchuk was. He's famous in our world. He's not famous in the outside world. Or less famous. Fame is relative. He just says, I day trade attention. Seth Godin, pretty famous in our world. He says, I notice things. And then he speaks about them and writes books about them. So why does this work? Well, we looked at the typical intro, which is about you, tries to be too complete, tries to be too accurate. The perfect intro is about who you help, and you make it interesting and confident. So it's about who you help. It's interesting. Think of it like a headline. A lot of copywriters in this room, a lot of bloggers, a lot of travel bloggers, a lot of Instagrammers. You guys write headlines for a living. So why don't you have a headline when you introduce yourself? You think so hard about the perfect Instagram post. But when someone says, so what do you do on a plane? We fumble around and we say, I'm a travel blogger. It's interesting. We teach people how to meditate at gunpoint. You have to know more when you see this. If he says that, you can't leave the room or the plane or the dinner until he explains it. It's flexible and infinite. Like Neil Gaiman said, you're all multifaceted, multi-talented people. You have many talents. Now you have an intro for every one of them. It's unexpected. They expect the crappy intro that I gave to Matt Mullenweg. They don't expect a very smart. It makes you feel like a superhuman when you know what you're going to say before the question. When they say, so what? And you already have your answer, and you look them in the eyes and smile and say it, it changes everything. It makes you more referable, both instantly and afterwards. Cameron Harold says, I help COOs double their business. You've known Cameron for 3 seconds, and now you know who to refer to him. Confidence and credibility. Think of how Jennifer Lawrence or George Clooney walk through the world. Confident, because they know what they do, and they have memorized their lines. And the most important thing, it allows you to connect over story. Your intro should prompt a question. It allows you to tell a story of it allows you to tell the story of the people that you help. So your intro should prompt a question, and we're going to get into your story in a second. It gives you consistency in your personal brand. Almost everyone in here is a personal brand or is building a personal brand. So the perfect personal brand, super quick side story. This is Tom Peters. He said, we are the CEOs of our own companies, Me Inc. To be in business today, our most important job is to be head marketer for the brand called you. It's that simple and that hard and that inescapable. Now, Tom is a genius. Any idea when he said this? When he said this, this was Google's homepage. It was literally called Backrub, and that was the creepy-ass logo for Google back in the day. Because Google was all about tracking backlinks, and before they named it Google, it was called Backrub. That's when Tom Peters explained the importance of personal branding. It was way before Insta. So you get these personal branding questions, tools. What about Instagram Live, Instagram Stories? Should I still be using Snapchat? I'm not really good at Snapchat. It's easier than all that. What you want to become is the blank man, the blank woman, or the blank person. It's really, really simple. I'm going to say a few of these, and I want you guys to yell out who I'm talking about. Who is the hustle guy? Gary, I need you to be louder. Come on. Who is the vulnerability woman? Brene Brown. Who is the 4-hour guy? Tim Ferriss. And you know him. And who is the why guy? Simon Sinek. So you know all of these because they have a personal brand. It's not because they use Instagram stories well. It's because they have a word that they own. And you know who they are because of that. There is no one blueprint to build a personal brand. Seth Godin doesn't use Twitter. Pretty good personal brand. It's not about the tools. Use the tools to get there, but memorizing the tools and asking questions about the tools are the wrong questions. There's a million bricks in the wall. These are just some of them. Some of them are the tools. If you have a TED Talk that has 20 million views, you don't need to use Snapchat. You can use all these things. Use what you love to use, and then use where your people are, where your tribe is, and use what you're good at. The one that when you wake up, you're actually excited to do that. It's your visual brand, it's credibility, and it's social proof, and then you get distribution in media. Any mix of these things. How well do your friends know what you do? Do they know what you do well enough to listen for what I call referral cues? Because more than anyone, your friends and your family want to help you. They want to send people to you. People think it's cool to have bad handwriting. I don't understand why. They're like proud of their terrible handwriting, but they're also proud of the fact that their parents don't know what they do. They walk around all the time, and they're saying, yeah, my mom, my dad, they don't really know what I do because I'm a cool travel blogger. They want to help you. They want to send you people. Everyone in your phone, the 1,000 people in your phone, should better understand what you do, who you work with, how you help them, because they want to send you people. When I used to say, I help entrepreneurs fund their dreams when I was in crowdfunding, as I built the brand and became the crowdfunding guy, my friends, like Matt, would listen at cocktail parties, just automatically listen for these referral cues. Whenever my friends heard the words Kickstarter, Indiegogo, crowdfunding, new idea, need funding, any of those words, it'd say, you got to talk to Clay. I never ran a Facebook ad for any of the crowdfunding stuff. Most of them came through word of mouth because when I was the crowdfunding guy, my friends knew to listen for these words. What are your referral cues so that your 1,000 people in your phone know to listen for these and send you people? What if you don't need a single stranger? What if you don't need a single Facebook ad? What if the friends and the friends of the 1,000 people in your phone were enough? I would bet that for almost any business in this room, if the people that know and love you in your phone knew what you did well enough to be listening for your referral cues and sending you business, that you wouldn't need to run a single ad. Seth Godin calls this famous to the family. I just said, walk outside. Most people don't know who Gary Vaynerchuk is. I was in New York City. My wine guy didn't know who Gary Vaynerchuk was. He's not famous in the world. He's not Kardashian famous. He's famous to the family. He's famous to this family, just like Matt's famous to this family. This is a motorcycle. What's next to the motorcycle? A sidecar. You guys want to have a sidecar interest. Gary has the New York Jets. I love great coffee. A sidecar interest gives your people in your tribe a way to connect and converse with you, not about your main topic. I don't run a coffee business. I just love great coffee. And so people know this and they connect with me. And they send me coffee. And I do coffee trades and drug deals in the North Woods of New York. And after talks, sometimes people send me coffee. It's a way for people to connect with me over something that's not my main topic. People who can't hire VaynerMedia still tweet with Gary about the Jets and say, oh, sorry, the Jets lost, because they always lose. When you think about creating content for your tribe, a lot of us create look at me content. Look at where I am. Look at the hotel I'm at. Look at the tiramisu I just ate. What you really want to create is learn from me content. That's why people follow you. So another thing on personal brands, personal taglines and hashtags. My friend Nick Onken is one of the best photographers in the world. He's photographed Justin Bieber and Usher and a million famous people and a bunch of non-famous people. And Nick has a personal tagline called Create Your Moments. Now his perfect intro can say, I help people create their moments, but he owns this. And then when he's on a podcast, this is a simple trick you guys can steal. When he's on a podcast, the podcast interviewer needs to name the podcast something, so Nick just kindly asks them, can we name it Create Your Moments with Nick Onken? And they say sure, because they need a title anyway, and that's what he talks about. And now when you Google Create Your Moments, you see a bunch of Nick's podcasts. It's his hashtag on Instagram, 18,000 posts. This is old, it's probably 20-some thousand now. But he basically owns the tagline, owns the phrase, create your moments. It's a pretty cool phrase to own if you're a photographer. Most importantly, this allows you to connect over story. Like we said, the perfect conversation should feel like a ping pong match. It's back and forth. It's not, I am a travel blogger, boom, end of conversation. You just caught the ping pong ball. It should prompt a question and allow you to tell a story. They're going to say, so what do you mean? I know the part you guys might be internally struggling with is, but Clay, if I stop there, they won't know my full thing. Well, this is where you tell the rest of it. But you don't, if they say, what do you mean, or how do you do that, that doesn't give you carte blanche to then explain the rest of the bullet points in the elevator pitch that we want to trash anyway. You get to say, really simple, well, let me tell you a story. Because our brains love stories. That's all we buy. That's all we pay for. Everything's a story. Netflix is a story. Game of Thrones is a story. There is no Netflix of resumes. There is no Netflix of press releases and bullet points. Ira Glass says the power of anecdote is so great, it has momentum in and of itself. No matter how boring the facts are, and sometimes the facts are boring, with a well-told story, you feel inherently, if you're on a train that has a destination. Literally, a different part of our brain lights up when we tell a story. As my friend Christopher Penn says, no kid ever said, Mommy, please read me a press release. So think about your case story. When I was doing crowdfunding, I'd say, I help entrepreneurs fund their dreams. And they say, what do you mean? I'd say, well, this is Lee Miller. This is Lee. He's the one on the left. And Lee invented this product called Kideo. And when he came to me, I said, how many emails do you have? And he said, 2. One for work, one for personal. I was like, no, how many emails have you collected? He didn't know what a landing page was, so I worked with him. And over 6 months, we gathered 13,000 emails of people who wanted Kideo. So when he launched his Kickstarter, he was funded in 36 minutes, 200% funded on the first day, raised $270,000, and now you can buy Kideo in Best Buy and Pet Value. And then you end your case story with, so that's what I do. I didn't tell you about crowdfunding or reward tiers or pricing or copy or video or anything else. I told you a story about that. Take them on a story. So think about, what's your favorite story? Now think about where you can use this, because I have news. You're introducing yourself right now. Even though you're sitting here watching me talk, somebody's opening an email from the other day. Somebody's on your Twitter, your Instagram bio. You're constantly introducing yourself, not just in person. Website headlines. Anton Zolotov could say, we help startups build amazing apps. Unfortunately, that's what Anton looks like. So we fixed his website, and now, kidding, Anton's a friend. So we fixed his website, and now it looks great. It looks like this. We help startups build amazing apps. The most magical word in marketing copy is your, because it makes it about them, not about you. I say I help entrepreneurs fund their dreams. Fund your dream. You guys like that? I stayed up all night making that for you. Fund your dream is a great name for a website headline, or a course name, social media bios. Dan Martell could say, I help entrepreneurs build technology products that change the world. Angie Lee could say, I help women not suck at sales. So what's your website headline? What could it be? Email signatures. You guys, a lot of you know Moo cards. You can put your portfolio in your pocket. You can walk around with it. Moo cards. Neen James could say, I help people listen with their eyes. Laura Gassner-Otting could say, I help leaders get unstuck. So your turn. How do you put your client success or case stories on your business cards? I have a nice little PDF that summarizes all this. I saw a lot of you guys taking pictures of the slides. If you want the handy little PDF, just text intros to 33444, and I will send it to you. Or if any of you guys want help, Matt's going to tell you more. I'm going to be in the next room after the coffee break. I'm terrible at Instagram. I know I talked about Instagram, but I'm brutal at it, so trying to be better. If you guys DM me intros on Instagram, Clay Hebert, I'll pick 10 of you and redo your Instagram bios or your perfect intro. But now I want you to forget the words. Saw a lot of you writing it down. Forget the words. And think about what it is that you get to do every day. You guys are travel bloggers. You don't pull a lever at a factory. You have really cool, interesting jobs. You run travel companies. So think about what it is you get to do every day. And if you could package that up in just a few words and transmit that passion, who wouldn't want to do business with you? Thank you.
Keep it. All right, all right. A round of applause for Clay. If you want some one-on-one help from Clay, after our coffee break at 11:30, he'll be in the America South Ballroom. You can just walk on in and pick his brain and get some help on telling your story. He'll be there. Well, I'll make him be there.